Welcome back, everybody, to the School Leadership Show. With me, as always, Jenn David Lang. Even though I've bailed on you for a couple of them, you keep coming back.
You have.
Well, I appreciate your stalwart efforts as I phone it in over the last couple, but thank you. And we have this is a special topic today that, to be honest with everybody, I did not want to do this. I don't want to touch this topic with a 10-foot pole. I am no longer a school principal. I don't want anything to do with talking about the impending election.
For school.
However, it is something that is important and that is on lots of people's minds. So Jenn was kind enough to find one of her friends and colleagues who is willing to talk to us about this from a position of knowledge and experience, which is wonderful. So Jenn, can you introduce Debbie and kind of set us up here?
Sure. And before people end the podcast, we're not going to talk about the election, but how 5 things leaders can do to prepare for it. So we're not going to get into politics today. But anyway, thanks, Mike. Glad to see you. Glad to have you back. I want to introduce Dr. Debbie McFallone. She has a long and distinguished career in the field of education. After serving as teacher, principal, superintendent, she is now both a consultant and coach who works with school-based as well as district-based teams and individuals literally all over the state of Michigan. She has been an inspiration to me for decades now as a colleague, but I'd also like to say she's my friend. And for today, the reason I'm so excited that she's joining us is that her work focuses primarily on the areas of courage and integrity and leadership. And that's exactly why we brought her in today to talk about preparing for this contentious election season. And plus, her third book is coming out in early 2025, and it's called Meeting the Moment, A Call for Courage. So with that, I would like to introduce Debbie to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jenn. I appreciate the opportunity for being here.
Glad you are here. So Mike, you want to start us off today? You're on mute as always.
There we are. Yeah, I'm happy to start us off. So in thinking about this topic, I think, and one of the reasons why we're talking about how to talk about the election and its results before it comes out is that, people need to be able to communicate clearly and proactively about it. So Debbie, are there any strategies or approaches that you feel like are more effective than others when it comes to talking about this kind of thing in a proactive way versus just reacting to it when it happens?
Sure. So one of the things that I think is so important is to have a clear sense of perspective. And yes, this is certainly saturating our national consciousness right now. But in schools, in this place called school, our core work has to do with teaching and learning. And so, Jenn, I loved what you said about we go back to our mission and what do we do here? And one of the finest superintendents that I know, when in disagreement or when there is tension in the room, she has a wonderful phrase. She will say, look, we are in the business of raising good humans. And we bring people together around that purpose to begin with and around that common work. I think it's important to remind people about who we are and the type of culture that we want our students to be surrounded by. We talk about the idea of forming, storming, norming, and performing. And I've shared that recently with a lot of people, just saying, if you are doing a bit of storming right now, then please think about what protocols, what strategies, what intentional actions you can have right now to bring your people back to their purpose and to bring them back to forming and reforming their connections.
I love all of that, Debbie. I want to give our listeners a little bit of context. So I put together a 2-page resource for my mastermind groups that I've been sharing widely with 5 ways school leaders can prepare for a contentious election. So Debbie was referring to my suggestion that you go back to the mission. And I think your quote really nails it, or the superintendent's quote, where we're in the business of raising good humans. So we're not asking school or district leaders to pivot or do anything different than they would. but we are in the business of raising good humans. But now might be a good time for a reminder,
Yeah.
a letter from a district or a school-based leader to
Right.
families, to staff as a reminder. This
Mhm.
is our mission, and this is the way we are expecting everybody, all the adults and the kids, to behave
Right.
based on our mission. Yeah.
Right. You know, Jen, this reminded me also, I use Gallup an awful lot as a reliable source for my writing and my work. And I continue to go back to what, they have identified in hundreds of thousands of pieces of research about who do our followers really need us to be as leaders. And this is all of the time. It's not just right now. And they need us, to be trustworthy. They need us to model stability. And they need us to show compassion and create hope. And those are four things that I just continue to go back to. We need to be doing that, yes, day in and day out. But particularly, Kuzi and Foster say challenge is the crucible of really great leadership. Anybody could do this if it was easy, y'all. So it's not easy right now, but it is time to remind ourselves of what values do our people really need. And I would be reminding my teachers of the same. What do your students need for you to be and model right now? They need the same.
Yeah, and I think if that modeling seems overwhelming to you personally as a leader, just I hate to do this, but remind yourself where we were a few years ago, right? We were all facing a lot of unknown in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm losing my voice. And we needed leaders who knew nothing about what was going to happen. None of us knew what was going to happen, but school communities needed leaders to be calm, to share the information they knew transparently and what they didn't know. And I think it's the same type of modeling with, we don't really know what's going to be happening leading up to the election and after.
That's right. They will also remember how we were during these days, just like they remember how we were during those days of the pandemic, won't they?
Yes. Yeah. That brings us back to Maya Angelou's quote, right? People will forget what you do, but they will always remember how you make them feel.
Mhm.
So just encouraging people to communicate clearly, proactively, think about now how you are going to message out and how that might be different for your
Right,
different communities, your families.
right. hmm
So let's think about, classrooms and hallways. What are some ideas to foster respectful and inclusive classrooms, given the difficult conversations that may be happening both in the classroom and in the hallways, both before and after?
hmm Um, one of my friends who's a wonderful facilitator, Tim Tarantine, says, let's talk about somebodyism, that everybody needs to feel as if they are somebody. And what are we doing as leaders to begin that? Well, we've known for years that the leaders who are visible participants in the lives of their school communities are the ones who are creating that sense of belonging. And again, this is so essential to think about during this time when things are really elevated. But this is your day in, day out work also. It is the work of leadership. So it's the importance of these face to face interactions and the importance of simply knowing your kids' names and knowing things about their family and being, as we said, a part of your community and understanding who they are and what they need. So those things come to mind, I guess, being in touch with your people and creating that sense of belonging. I'm working in two school districts where they have named K-12 a sense of belonging as one of their district-wide school improvement goals this year because of the data about loneliness and anxiety and the issue about that in our culture right now.
Well, and I think, Debbie, too, your point's well taken that we have in our systems, we have policies, procedures, practices in place that we use for a lot of things already. I feel like as we're talking, this feels analogous to, I don't know, back in the early 2000s, I was in a school district where religion was a big thing, where we stopped having Christmas trees and we stopped having like decorations, but instead tried to move it more toward learning about religion, not teaching religion, but learning about it. And, I also think, in terms of things, technological innovations, when things come out and people start to freak out, we still have acceptable use policies and data privacy policies and things like that. So the idea that we're not trying to create something new to deal with this, we're using the tools that we hopefully already have in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Mike, you bring back the point, right? Whether we're talking about whatever the contentious issue is, right? Here's the election, but whether it's, religion or other, historical moments or issues, I think the point is we want to grow our kids as people who can talk across difference, who can disagree with the people and not the ideas. So I think the types of skills we're talking about reinforcing, it's not like, okay, up through next week, and then we're talking about lifelong skills. So if leaders and teachers can be introducing the types of skills, the types of sentence starters, the types of protocols that teach our kids, how do you talk to each other even when you disagree? No kid is going to say, well, what does this have to do with anything? What is this, parabola? This is the real stuff of life. We are going to go through life working in teams, working with people we disagree, having people in our families who we disagree with. So I think you're right, Mike. It's not a whole new thing. It's building on what we're doing. And then talking about building on what we're already doing, I think most schools are bringing in some type of SEL work, especially since the pandemic. So how could you weave this in? How could teaching about empathy or trying to understand what it's like for kids or families who vote or have different feelings about different issues? I think this is the perfect moment to teach these things if you can prepare and build a foundation and a classroom where, like you said, Debbie, where there's already a sense of belonging.
Right.
So yeah, I have a link in this resource too. I just wrote a summary of one of the most recent Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry, Dominique Smith. They wrote a book called Building Belonging in School, which you're right, it should be happening year round.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get too into it because we have so many districts, so many states, but this is also a time to think a little bit about the challenges and the legal issues. So maybe I don't know if either do you want to say anything about this?
And maybe I could frame it a little bit more tightly because I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV, but
or
I think
on a podcast.
or on a podcast. But I think in some ways I worry less about leaders because that we got a principal, a couple assistant principals, maybe okay, you can get that. I can wrangle a group like that. But I have we got lots of classrooms, we got lots of teachers. How do you address it when you have a teacher who is just sort of, because it's going to happen. We're going to have teachers kind of go off the rails, or they'll wear black if their candidate doesn't win or something stuff like that. Do you try to get out ahead of that? Do you address it when it happens? All of course depends on the context, but where's your gut tell you to go?
Well, first of all, I would hope that if you're in a leadership position, you are blessed by good common sense. And so, a couple.
Oh, Debbie, aren't you cute? Look at you, common sense.
I have my rose-colored glasses on just because you can't see me. But I do. Sometimes you have to fall back on your good judgment. You are paid to be there with good judgment and address things. And so, again, it's primary for the leader to remain regulated. And particularly if this is going to be a legal issue, you do not want emotions in the way, and you don't want the problem exacerbated by the heightened tension that can happen during that conversation. And so I believe that first of all, you give the person feedback. If they are dressed in black, wearing armbands, wearing something that, and they're saying to every class all day long how terrible it is and everything, I think you have to step up and address that. And again, I'm like a mantra here, but you go back to our purpose. So this is becoming a distraction from the learning. And
Yes.
what students need to be doing is attending to learning. So I'm going to need you to be aware of that. We understand your disappointment, but we do need to focus on the learning.
And Debbie, I love the word you used, regulated. I only kind of hear that when we're talking about students and their own behavior. No, but you're absolutely right. And I think that is the conversation that many of us will have with
Mhm.
administrators, particularly in building levels, be like you said, we get it. You're upset, but your job is to hold it together.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I also think there's, and Mike, you're talking about proactive or address it, both. I think both. And,
Yeah.
our teachers may not know, right? What is the regulation? What is, can a teacher the day after say, this is who I voted for and I'm upset, right? Or I'm happy, can they
Right.
say, I think you have to be really clear
Right.
what you as a teacher can and cannot do. And, I have this one quote of a principal who said, I hope you'll be politically ambiguous, but morally crystal clear, right? And
I
then even
love
say what that means, in the
I love
school,
that.
right? So be as clear as you can with that one.
Mhm. I love that. And again, what are we modeling? It is one thing to say, I would share that I am disappointed, and together we're going to continue to hope that we will turn, okay, that's okay. But it is not going to be okay to denigrate the other side just because we are hearing that kind of thing. And we can't be modeling that. We can't be modeling the hate for the kids, right? And so that's where I think we have to step in so strongly too.
And as a reminder, there was an uptick in bullying in 2016. And so I think to
Right.
anticipate there may be increased tensions, we don't know, violence, discriminatory or racist or other remarks. I would say get all of your teachers, if you usually have one teacher who is in the hallway or is in the cafeteria or is greeting students in the morning, get everybody up to speed and say, hey, I need your presence. I'm going to be out all day. I'm not, no meeting, for the day after. I need you out in the hallways and around and be really clear about why.
That's
And
right.
there's a ton of speculation out there that there won't be results the
Right.
next morning.
No,
So,
that's
I mean,
right.
I think, but Jen and I are always big fans of trying to give people language to use.
Right.
So, is it, I'm trying to imagine myself as a principal, back
Uh-huh.
as a principal and thinking, I think what you're saying about let's get back to our why we're here. We're
Mhm.
here for learning. And I think that's a great one to if the conversation is kind of getting off track, remember folks, we're working on quadratic equations today. And that's
Mhm.
what we're doing, right? Or I mean, do you have any other thoughts on how we might be
Sure.
able to prep teachers
Sure.
for sort of extricating themselves from situations that they don't want to be in?
Sure. And I think sometimes you just say what you see. So sometimes, Mike, I simply say, I'm not comfortable with the level of tension in our conversation right now. And so we're going to press pause, kids. And some of these issues are better off and more appropriate for you to discuss at home. So right now, we're going to get back to our stuff here today. Do you know?
I love it.
And I got to laugh, Mike, because Debbie has a Monday morning newsletter that she sends out, and she's all about sharing language. She loves to share, sort of send it like how things sound. She doesn't talk vaguely about things. She gives very concrete ideas. So
So,
maybe you should sign up for
Oh,
it.
yes. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Great, good. So great. So this is probably up your alley. So Debbie, what are some thoughts? Obviously, we need to anticipate and address just the heightened emotions that are
right.
going to be around this next week, day
Yeah,
after, and as Mike says, maybe for some time to come. Any thoughts about that?
sure. Do you know, just looking at this through the leadership lens, once again, you two, one of the things that occurred to me is, boy, oh boy, you've got to understand your own your own individual well-being right now too. And so this isn't a time to skip meals. It's not, I mean, it is a time to make a plan, whether it's for Friday, the end of election week, or whatever, but to make a plan and to say, I'm going to intentionally rest, or I'm going to intentionally go for a great meal with people that I love, or I'm going to take a hike and get back to nature on that weekend. It's really important for the leader, first of all, when you think about heightened emotions, take care of yourself first, right? We know that. And then I think we have to give our staff the same type of idea about themselves. And, this may be a week to put bagels in the lounge, to do, small things to lift their spirits. Like Michael Fullen says, love your people, right? Love your people when you're going through tough times. So, and being again, the visible person. This is a time to explain to your administrative assistant, I'm going to spend a lot of time out of the office this week, and expect me to be in classrooms and in hallways, and I'm going to be popping in to test the mood, see how people are, offer my support, give a smile, pat someone on the arm, just be inquiring as to the well-being of my people. It's really about that.
I think that's great that you started with the leader, because a lot of us, right, we feel like, oh, I'm fine, and I think it's helpful to anticipate you might not be, and yet you still have to show up. So what are you going to do to prepare for that?
Mm-hmm.
And then for the staff, thinking of something concrete of what, how you're going to show up for them, whether it's, bagels or you being present, or in one school, I know since the pandemic, they've had a Google form where every kid every day sort of writes a word or so about how they're feeling. And so they know these are the 10% of kids in real trouble today, right? It helps them sort of triage their efforts.
Yeah.
And I was talking to this school, and I said, well, why not do that for staff day after election, right? Why not also say, every staff check in, and so here are a few people I particularly need to check in with.
Yeah.
Or, anticipate the emotions in class. I wonder about getting all of your faculty and your staff together a half hour before school starts, and just to be in a room together, whether it's just to breathe, or I know one school, they have a choice, meditation or pickleball, depending on your.
Nice.
Hard for us in New York City, but some way to bring staff together, just to be together, or for you to say a few grounding words as the leader.
And and offer it as, we have had a difficult time. Who would like to gather just to regain our connection this morning?
Yeah.
And I will bring coffee and something, and let's just be together, regardless of our feelings about the outcome. We are here, we work together, and we are here with a common purpose to honor our students and serve them well.
I think that would be great. And I also think there's a lot of teachers who, they're going to go first period. Excuse me, my dog is barking.
I love it. No worry. It's podcast verite. But
Yeah.
Debbie, I do think about this a lot. Like, even because, principals, we all do it, right? There's some people we gravitate toward more than others. There's people we likely have more personal conversations with than others, and I think this might make that a little tough. If I've been talking to one of the teachers that works with me, and we've been having this conversation about the way we want it to go, and it doesn't go that way, but it went the way other people wanted it to go. Like, I worry about, how do you, hopefully you haven't been doing that, but like, I just, again, like, any thoughts or suggestions?
Well, we always are charged with trying to find common ground, even with the people whose temperament is much different than ours, or whose values may be different. But we are charged with finding common ground because we are living together in this school. So I think you have to continue to look for connecting points, whether it's some common interest outside of school, or asking them about their interests, or just inquiring about their personal lives and understanding that everybody has their own story.
And
So,
I think I also think acknowledging too, right? Of course, everyone has their own story. Even like what you said, Mike, coming in the day after, if you do gather people and say, yeah, I understand everyone has a different perspective, a different background, and maybe, a different candidate.
that's right.
And that's okay. That's what makes us a diverse school. We want that, right? But but for today, we're not going to talk about candidates. We're gonna focus on what do we all have to do? We have to serve the kids today, right? And then this is our common purpose for today.
Yeah.
This is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And sorry, when my dog was barking, I was also going to say, and they may have trouble with talking about emotional things.
Sure.
With kids, you may want to say first 20 minutes of school, we're not going to do academics, right? We're going to all meet in small homerooms or advisories, and kids can just write or draw. Or I have a link to a Facing History on Ourselves video where it mentions a very simple structure where kids can write or talk from the head, the heart, and the conscience. Talk about like what they know,
Yep.
the head, what they're feeling, the heart, and then the conscience. What does it mean for me?
Yeah.
So the final area is just simply, opportunities for growth and learning. I mean, as much as Mike is terrified of this conversation, we are educators and we are all about learning. So, I found some wonderful videos online of teachers really using this to hold mock elections in the class, whether it's for the actual candidates from their city, state, or national government, or for their favorite Paw Patrol character. I saw teachers really making use of this or trying to understand all those polls. What great math classes. So I don't know if you've seen people taking advantage or really using this to teach. I think, go ahead, Debbie. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. What else?
I think we would be remiss if we didn't use this as an opportunity to talk about media literacy, right? I mean,
it raises up the importance of that. It raises up the importance of critical thinking skills, which is, of course, closely related to media literacy, and is directly connected to all the AI stuff that is going on. How do we know what is true, right? It also raises up the idea, I think, of the other element that we want in high functioning classrooms, and that's the element of student voice. Where are we honoring student voices? And how do we continue to give opportunity for that? Are students having debates, as you mentioned in your piece, Jen, but are they having debates, not just about this, but debates about other issues that may be closer to their hearts? Something about their school band, or another issue that can be going on in their own community. What are we doing about that? So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to think, so the election is right now, but what are the bigger issues that we need to take from this and continue?
Well, and the idea that there will always be issues. This just happens to
That's
be
right.
an issue right now. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, and I feel bad saying this out loud, but the three of us know that in the schools where
Right.
the folks have been doing work on productive dialogue and how to disagree, they're going to fare a lot better than the
Right.
ones who haven't done any work and are expecting to be ready to go next week.
Mhm.
So, I mean, not who knows, maybe for some people that will be a catalyst for positive change. But,
Mhm.
Those are the folks that I worry about, is the people who haven't invested necessarily the time and effort into doing this work.
Sure. And I
Mike,
think
you're saying we did this podcast too late. Is what you're
I'm not
saying?
saying that at all.
that's all
We've done,
right.
if people have been listening, we've taught you
Yeah,
how to do this before.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Debbie. You had something more intelligent to say.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's gone now. So whatever intelligence I had is now gone.
Well, at least it's the real kind and not the artificial.
There
So,
we go.
so Debbie, any parting shots, and where can folks go to learn more about you and your work?
Oh, well, thanks for asking that. My website is livewellleadstrong.com. And you can find a link there to receive my Monday message, which is a leadership piece that goes out every Monday to people if you would like. I'd love that. Thanks for asking. My final piece is, perhaps this experience during the election brings an awareness to leaders about, I have some growth to do regarding exemplary leadership. And that would be good for me anytime, not just during the time of an election.
Debbie McFlone, I mean, that was fantastic. Thank you. I was dreading this conversation. You made it not only informative, but also pleasant.
It
So
was a pleasure.
thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Thanks.
Jen, good pickup here. Good work.
All right. Well, thanks so much. We do appreciate you taking the time, Debbie. Really appreciate the
course.
conversation. It's
My
so
pleasure.
important. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to me, Mike, at schoolleadershipshow.com. And please consider rating the podcast in iTunes and leaving a comment. And definitely pass the show along to your colleagues.